Hey guys, so I just want to show you this high lift jack mount that I bought on eBay. I got it for about $50, and I gotta say my first impression is that it seems kind of cheap. But you know, we'll do installation and we'll put the high lift jack on and we'll do some driving around with it and see how it works out. So first off, it did not come with any instructions. So I looked online, I emailed the person who sold me this, the supplier, and they sent me some really bad instructions, just a few photos with some broken English, on how to install it. It didn't come with much either. Basically it came with these two, hand screw bolts. I'm guessing one goes, probably up here on this end, on the gate right here. I'm guessing one goes through like that, and then it cinches down, and then the other goes down here. It's a little dirty because I actually was trying to see how my high lift jack that I just bought would fit on it. And then it looks like this one goes right here. And then it also came with this little guy. I think this is to clamp down the front foot of it. So you'd actually probably put it in there like that and then cinch it down. Came with two bolts. I'm guessing this is to replace the tailgate bolts that are on there, since they might be a little bit longer, but we'll take a look at that. I think one goes here and the other goes just on top. Then it came with these two spacers, and I don't know if these go in between the thumb screws, or if they're supposed to go in between these in the bolts like this, if they're too long. Either way, we'll find out. Like I said, initial impressions, it doesn't look like it's the most well-made product. A couple modifications I'm going to add to it are some just foam tape, basically, some window sealant, and put that on the back of it. Probably just cover a section of the back of this, so that way I don't have this rubbing up against the bare metal and paint on my vehicle. So hopefully this will give it some sort of a barrier cushion. I might also use some just metal and or rubber washers, but again, I'll have to see how much length I can get out of this bolt with all this on there, trying to protect my vehicle and the mount itself. So stay tuned, we'll get installation going on this. So you can see that I put that foam stripping on the back of this. What I purchased was 1/4 inch, but I think you could probably get away with 1/8 inch, especially depending on the length of these bolts. But this will compress down a little bit. I think I'm going to be using this rubber washer just on this end, and then a metal washer on the other end. But yeah, if you're going to do this, leave enough space for that washer. And yeah, in general, that's how I did it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do for this install is remove the rear tire, just because we don't want any unnecessary weight on the tailgate while we're removing two of those 4 bolts on the hinge. So to start off, just by removing your camera, use your included T30 Torx bit, turn that to the left, and then pop off the cover, so that way you can get to all 3 of the lug nuts. Now you can take either your included crowbar in the vehicle or a breaker bar with a 22mm hex socket on it, and remove your lug nuts. Alright, and then you're good to go. You can remove your rear tire. Okay, now you're going to want to take your T55 star key and insert it into the one of the bolts right there. I'm choosing this side because if I chose this side, the mount won't be able to clear the tire. And these can be a little bit tight with your T55, so don't use the T50 or else you'll strip it. But instead, use a hammer if you need to, place it, then just give it a couple taps with the hammer to put it in. Now you can use your breaker bar and you can pop these off. So I just wanted to show you a side-by-side comparison of the bolt that was included in the mount kit and the star, bolt that you had on your Jeep JL. They are similar in length. However, this one is slightly, longer to accommodate, any gapping created by the mount. And hopefully it's enough, with these washers that I'm going to be using on it as well. Alright, now you can use a rag just to clean up this area before you install. Alright, and so for this first one, as I mentioned, I'm using a small metal washer. Put that on first. And I'll put this through the top slot. Take my rubber washer and I'll put it on the back side. Okay, so I did have to remove the metal washer, that one that I put on the bolt first, so that way it could have enough clearance to go in. Okay, so now you're going to want to take your torque wrench, an extension, and a 17mm, socket, and tighten these down to 35 pounds. So now that you got the mount installed, you're going to want to reinstall your tire. Then you're going to want to double check your manual, but to tighten the lug nuts down on the spare, you are going to want to have 59 pounds per feet or feet per pound on your torque wrench. You're going to put your cover back on. Alright, and then you can double check that everything's seated properly. It's closing pretty easily. It's lined up as well. You can see that it clears the tire pretty well. We'll put the jack on and see how it does. So it all the way down, jack all the way down, it looks like this retention spring right here, or clamp or whatever, is getting in the way of this gate closing. Yeah, that's just not gonna happen. So maybe if I lift this section up a little bit, we can clear it above. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so you can see that I, lifted the jack section up a little bit, so now that spring can clear this gate. However, it's just, this gate isn't long enough because, there's no space back here, and the front of this jack is pinched in between here, whereas it's supposed to be pinched in between these two, so it's not closing all the way and seating properly. So I have a pretty good gap here. I might use a spacer, I guess, maybe just to, put it there. And then down here, everything looks like it works. However, this is a really, long bolt to have to screw all the way in. So maybe I'll go to Lowe's and just get a shorter one, or maybe I'll, cut this down and so it's at least half the size, or maybe I'll use the spacer again, but then I don't want a lot of loose parts when I have to, take this on and off. One other little issue I had was this little nut here. It's not a self-locking nut, so every time you open and close the gate, it does loosen. I think I'm probably gonna go to Home Depot and get another, locking nut for that to fit. So, and that's a pretty wide gap to have to put a lock in between now. You could do it, if you get a long enough lock and do it sideways, but, all the little modifications you have to do for this, jack to work out, I don't know if it's really worth it in the end. It does look like it's pretty close to the paint right here, so I am worried about that rubbing over time. Yeah, just a lot of issues I'm kind of seeing with this. So we'll see if I keep it or not, but it does look good on the back of my Jeep. I gotta say, I do like that. Let's see how it works with clearance. Yep, completely clears it. The hinge and everything. Doesn't, bump against the bottom, although this protruding bolt looks like it's gonna get pretty close. It's not resting on the back bumper at all, so that's good. Okay, so I just got back from a little drive with the jack mount on the back of the car. You know, I didn't hear anything, it wasn't rattling, you know, no noise from the, you know, top of the, you know, bar above my car. You know, one thing I did notice was that to open this rear window, you do need to have the tailgate all the way open for it to clear. It just barely clears that bar. And then the glass does not touch the top of the bar. So, you know, it's okay, I'd say. I do a little bit more driving with it, but we'll see how I like it. All in all, with the amount of, you know, extra stuff you gotta purchase for this, I don't know what I'd rate it. Maybe like a 2 out of 5. It just, you know, was a lot more work than I really expected.